Taliban? Also, why swap 5 high-ranking Taliban terrorists for a deserter? And why allow Qatar to broker this deal? Joining me now, investigative journalist and Daily Ledger contributor Kimberly Dvorak. Kimberly, Qatar, of all countries, in the middle of this transaction, brokering this deal, why Qatar?
Why Qatar? Well, Qatar's kind of been our new best friend when it comes to moving weapons, fundraising, and whatnot with the Syrian effort. I think that they made a natural partner here for the president. He and his cabinet members have all worked with Qatar. They've all had enormous amounts of praise locked on Qatar, but in the end, Qatar is just really a strong front man for Saudi Arabia.
So Qatar is trying to be on the world stage. Is it boiled down to that? They're trying to be a power broker?
Absolutely. They're playing the Middle East, and they're actually getting it.
Okay, so there is this link between Saudi Arabia and Qatar. But on the battlefield of Syria, there is a link between Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United States, and that is they're all backing the rebels.
Absolutely, yeah. We're seeing that the rebels are getting the, you-know-what kicked out of them. Assad is essentially winning, and the only way for the rebels to regain some sort of momentum is to be getting more weapons and more training, and that requires money. Now, in 2014, just April, 2 months ago, less than 2 months ago, the State Department, John Kerry, by the way, State Department, came out with a new report showing that the worry for fundraising for Al-Qaeda and the Taliban was coming from Qatar. They're saying approximately $1 billion to $3 billion was raised last year for the war effort inside Syria. And those are going to the likes of Al-Qaeda. Those are the same folks that were getting weapons when we saw the whole incident happen with Benghazi. We have reports, tons of reports, New York Times, all saying that, yeah, this is exactly what's happening. Yet when you look out there for the bigger picture, nobody wants to recognize that, and the fact that Qatar is playing such a low or is getting such a low profile and escaping scrutiny has got to be alarming.
The bottom line is, in Syria right now, the folks that the United States, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar are all supporting also include Al-Qaeda terrorists. And to me, that's just an alarming fact. It's true. Al-Qaeda is part of the rebel forces. And you can't pick and choose which weapons hands these are going to go into.
No, it's incredibly difficult to take the word of one terrorist group over the other terrorist group. I mean, they could come out and say, hey, I'm Ahmed, and I'm over here, and I'm with the Free Syrian Army, and all I want is Assad gone, and I'll work with you guys in the future. Well, are we going down to the database? I mean, how are we, doing background checks, going into his village and asking the tribal elders about him? I mean, there's absolutely no way to guarantee that we're giving weapons and money to good guys or bad guys, for that matter. And I think that, you look at the prisoner swap, you look at, the Bergdahl, all of the controversy around this, and I think that, you kind of have to take a look at what happened at the White House over the weekend. The Rose Garden ceremony was a sign, a signal to the Taliban that the White House was now shifting gears. We were going to be winding down the war, and we were going to work with them on peace process in Afghanistan.
How do we work with terrorists? I mean, what happened to this long-standing tradition that you don't negotiate with terrorists? And you believe the White House is now sending the message that, hey, Taliban, we're willing to sit down and chat with you?
Well, yeah, I mean, and this is ironic, because when I was in Guantanamo and the hearings that I was listening in on there with KSM, who's the mastermind 9/11, the judge in the end allowed him to wear a military vest because he said he was employed by the U.S. government, the military of the United States of America, to fight the Taliban. I worked with the Northern Alliance, he said, and I fought the Taliban. Now you're telling me we're negotiating with the Taliban? Nothing squares with all of this.
So, back to Qatar. We have the president meeting with the emir of Qatar when the emir's son, ironically, presumably, I guess, was graduating from West Point. So they sit down and they, let's assume they help broker this deal. And part of the deal is that Qatar is going to watch these terrorists for a year. Now we find out, yeah, you laugh, because now we find out they're already running free around Qatar. And presumably, they can cross the border and get out of there, and they can, in my opinion, they're going to be back targeting us, you and me, Americans again.
Yeah, and I think that, what we need to take away from this, too, is not only will the military be targets, because we are still going to leave 10,000 troops behind in Afghanistan for 2 years, but you're going to see diplomats across the world, as well as, I believe, U.S. tourists. You go to a part of the world where there are jihadis around, they know now that they're going to be able to negotiate, whether it be money, getting their prisoners back from Guantanamo Bay, you name it, they know that we opened the door. We didn't just open the door a crack, we opened it wide open, and we let go some really bad guys that under the 9/11 who are currently having their hearings and their day in court down in Guantanamo Bay. You have got the Taliban 5. They were the next top group that we were targeting.
These are lieutenants. These are people that helped coordinate things, raise money, and they're going to be at it all over again.
Intelligence. They were intelligence officers similar to our CIA. They have very specific skill set here, and we're going to see that they're going to, be used some way, shape, or form to raise money and get the money into Syria.
It's a very dangerous and deadly precedent to set. Kimberly, thank you. Coming up next, stop the tape.